The government's obsession with the voice comes at a time when we're experiencing a dramatic and severe cost of living crisis, when Australia is approaching stagflation. The Yes campaign, however well-meaning, feels out of touch to many Australians when children are now going to school starving because of inflation. We've also got aggressive rate rises, higher power, petrol and grocery prices. School principals are now calling charities to help feed hungry students. The Charity Food Bank today revealed there's been an alarming correlation between hunger and rate rises, with more students arriving at school with no lunch. The Australian newspaper reports a New South Wales primary school recently asked the charity for help after teachers realised some young students were asking to go to the toilet as an excuse to rummage through classmates' bags in search of food. The Food Bank CEO said the consequences are alarming from a health perspective, but also for educational outcomes. She says we can't expect children to concentrate when they've tipped into hangry before the day's even started. And while most children are tucked up in bed at night, some parents are buckling their tiny kids in their pyjamas into the car while they do food delivery runs just to make ends meet. These are adults on regular jobs, but middle incomes just aren't enough anymore to meet the rising cost of living in Australia. Peter Dutton today said inflation is now higher in Australia than in most of the world.
It's no mistake that inflation is higher in Australia than G7 countries around the world, except for the United Kingdom. That core inflation is an indicator that the problem is here in Australia with inflation. Yes, there are international factors, but there always are.
And it's the new normal to work multiple jobs, as Mark Burris told us on this program last night.
Lots of our clients, our customers, are taking second jobs and third jobs and doing, becoming Uber drivers and doing all sorts of different things. And because unemployment is so low, there's lots of opportunities for people to work overtime, extra time, second jobs.
When this is what average families are dealing with, Labor's obsession with the voice doesn't sit comfortably with many Australians. It feels to them out of touch. People are struggling. They want to know how the government is helping to solve this crisis. Instead, all people hear every day is Albanese and Linda Burney talking about the voice. They also hear about the voice from business leaders, from their favourite sporting clubs, and now even from celebrities. The Hollywood star Kate Blanchett was on the ABC last night saying this.
It's an extraordinary time for an extraordinary country. It does make me sad that there's a lot of fear being generated around a really positive moment for us as a nation. And we have to remember that the primacy of Parliament is not under threat. It's not under threat. There's a certain voice that is never really, in a non-partisan way, in an eternal way, represented at that table, and that's an Indigenous voice. And it's time we evolved to include all Australians.
And then Linda Burney gave a major speech at the Press Club today on The Voice. She spoke at length to try give more detail about how it will work. She intends for The Voice to give advice, she said, on 4 priority areas: education, health, jobs and housing. She said The Voice will focus on generational change, not short-term election cycles. And she said it's just not good enough for The Voice to be legislated.
Why does the voice need to be in the Constitution? Why can't it just be legislated? A voice or representative body cannot be truly independent or give frank advice to the government of the day if the government of the day can abolish it with the stroke of a pen. Secondly, it's what First Peoples requested in the Uluru Statement from the Heart.
It's great that Linda Burney is finally giving some detail about The Voice so people can make up their minds on whether to support it or not. But she couldn't just explain. She had to attack. She claimed the No campaign was importing Trump-style tactics and causing division in our society. In making those remarks, Linda Burney too was causing division in our society by likening those who oppose the voice to Trump. And she wagged her finger as she said, "Do not let them get away with it."
Do not let the No campaign get away with using Trump-style politics in Australia. Do not let them divide us.
When she says do not let the No campaign get away with this, who is she asking this of? Do not let them. Is this why the government wants to introduce misinformation laws? So information the government doesn't like or considers misinformation can be blocked or removed. It's not absurd to suggest this. It happened during the COVID pandemic, and as you know, government ministers and the Yes campaign have repeatedly accused No campaigners of misinformation, and Linda Burney did it again today.
People need to understand that misinformation and disinformation is damaging, and I do not apologise.
She also accused the opposition leader, Peter Dutton, of bullying.
I don't think the business community will be very impressed by the bully boy tactics of Peter Dutton.
And by the way, at the end of her speech, Linda Burney received from the Press Club audience in Canberra a standing ovation. After 2 weeks of immense pressure in Parliament to give more detail about the voice, and with support for the voice crashing in the polls, Labor finally realised that it did need to put some more meat on the bone. But they could have done it without attacking those who don't agree with them, without the finger wagging. But there's another point here as well, and this one is more crucial. There's been a very clear erosion of voter trust in the Albanese government. When you have Katie Gallagher insisting she didn't mislead the Senate when it's plain as day to see that she did, well, how can she then be trusted when she tells us the economy is fine, there won't be a recession, as she did yesterday in her capacity as Finance Minister?
We forecast our expectations around growth in the budget. We're expecting growth to moderate across the economy, slow. We're seeing that. The RBA acknowledged that today. But we are expecting the economy to grow.
And when you have Chris Bowen using weasel words to avoid questions about whether power prices will still be cheaper under Labor, this too erodes trust. He even looked quite sheepish when he was asked this last night.
Power prices are fluctuating internationally. There's a lot of pressure coming out of Europe at the moment. There's a lot of changes in the European situation with the war in Ukraine. Things like solar panels and batteries are a big cost, but there is also support there through our $1.7 billion energy savings package. A number of firms are very active in providing, no interest loans or very low interest loans to do that.
And Sarah Ferguson had asked him if he would repeat the statement he made during the election campaign that power prices would be cheaper under Labor. Well, he couldn't quite get there. He wasn't upfront about the obvious, that of course energy bills are more expensive now. He can't repeat his election promise for cheaper power bills because it's such an absurd prospect. Energy bills are going up 20 to 30% this month, depending on your state, but he's not apologising for the broken promise or even admitting that there is one. This is what starts to erode trust. So when the government asks Australians to trust it on the voice, you can understand why polls show that 50% of people aren't buying it. Australians do want an end to Indigenous disadvantage, but they also want to know how this constitutional change will work. And they're being asked to trust the word of Linda Burney, of Mark Dreyfus, of Albanese. In a sense, this referendum is as much one on the Albanese government as it is on the voice. It's about trust in how the voice will operate and how much power it will have. And it's for this reason that it was a mistake for Katie Gallagher not to be open and transparent. It's why Albanese's lack of accountability has also been a mistake. He thinks backing in his ministers to avoid an even bigger scandal is the right way to go. Nothing to see here about the mean girls. Don't worry about Gallagher misleading the Senate. She's got the highest integrity of anyone that Albanese knows. This attitude is a problem because now Australians are sceptical about the word of his ministers. It's at the very heart of why this referendum is currently on track to fail. And coming in the middle of the worst cost of living crisis, when children are going to school starving and parents are bundling their kids into the car to deliver food to other families whose kids are rightly so tucked up in bed. When we're looking at a repeat of 1970s stagflation. Against this backdrop, Albanese's campaign for a referendum on the voice comes at entirely the wrong time.
It's the number one issue.
About inflation, are you worried that it is now becoming entrenched or sticky? Because, as you point out, the underlying inflation rate only fell from 6.5 to 6.4%.
Yeah, I mean, that's the deep concern. It's not just my concern. I think if you talk to many economists, they'll say the concern is we are stuck at a level well above the target band, which is 2 to 3%.
Are we seeing stagflation then?
We're certainly seeing a slowing economy, and the economy is shuddering to a halt. In the last quarter, it was negative on a per-person basis. It's 0.2% in absolute terms. You know, that is as close to zero, almost as close to zero as you can get.